Welcome in this tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to learn that how to install HDP 2.5, that is Hortonworks distribution version 2.5 on SUSE, that is SUSE distribution of Linux, which is having version 11 and service pack 3. Actually, most of the videos or most of the sessions for Hadoop installation has been provided on YouTube for mostly either Ubuntu or CentOS, you know. So you will find very less material on how to use the SUSE distribution Linux for installing any Hadoop distribution. This is also there is also one of the reasons behind it is basically the SUSE Linux are like that the versions of SUSE are getting heavily used in the production deployment of Hadoop basically. So you should be knowing that how to install any Hadoop distribution on the SUSE Linux. So for that, what we will do is we are going to follow this document from top to bottom. It's not that big or it's not that complicated to understand basically. So all that you need in order to perform this tutorial or in order to perform this exercise is to have the SUSE 11 SP3 ISO, that is the installable image, so that you can install that on or you can create a virtual machine of SUSE 11. So I have provided the link over here in order to download that ISO. So first thing that you need to do is to go and download from this link. For that you need to create a ID on that. Okay, you need to create your login, and then once you create a login, give your login credentials and password, and you will be able to download the ISO from this link. Then since we are going to use HDP 2.5 installation on the top of SUSE, we need the Ambari RPMs and HTTP 2.5 RPM. So again, this is the link from where you can download the Ambari tar.gz. You can then need to unzip it and then put it in some folder that we are going to use later on while installation. And similarly, after Ambari, you need to download the HTTP 2.5 RPMs and its util RPMs. Okay, so these are like these are having the complete Hadoop Hadoop distribution of HTTP 2.5. So the brief of it is basically what we are going to do in this tutorial is we'll create a VM of SUSE 11. Okay, we will configure it, and we will, the important point of to look into the configuration of SUSE is that we need to create the image in such a way that we can clone it, because most of the times what happens is, suppose if you start with any VM and if you start doing something in it, and suppose if you mess up something, then what you will do, I mean, it's very difficult to roll back the things, and what you will do is basically you may need to create the new VM and then retry the things that wherever you have failed. So in that case, basically the cloning of whatever you had done and whatever you are confident, okay, till this point everything is okay, you can clone that image and create a it's like kind of a duplicate, and then use the original one in order to perform all the experiments. If you even fail at some point, you can just destroy that image and then use the clone version of it and then again restart. The problem in SUSE is basically whenever you try to clone any image of SUSE, virtual image of SUSE, basically due to its configuration, it does not allow you to create, or even if you create the clone, basically you are not able to start that clone normally. Okay, so we will look into that and try to understand that how to create a SUSE VM so that it can be clonable. Then so we will create an image of SUSE, then we will configure it, and we will have all the services just like HTTP service, NTP service. Then we may need to off the firewalls. Okay, so there are some like basic configuration needed for Hadoop installation. All we will do that, and then we will upload the repositories. Like we do now this all these Ambari and HTTP repositories we are having at our local system. We will upload it to the VM in HTTP path. Okay, and definitely we are going to create our local web server which will point for all the installation of Ambari and HTTP on SUSE. Okay, and then we will just configure our SUSE furthermore in order to create all the networkings and make the firewalls off, and we need to do some basic configuration for HTTP so that it will point to the correct directories and repos, and finally we will get that done. Okay, so let's start. So this is my virtual box. So I'm going to create a new image over here and I will name it as SUSE 2. I mean, this is randomly, you can choose any name over here, but then you need to select the operating system type, that is Linux, and OpenSUSE 64, that is the version of it. Okay, as soon as I write SUSE, it will be automatically picked up like that. Okay, there are multiple operating systems, and for multiple operating systems we do have multiple versions that you can select as an operating system. Okay, so I will say next. Then I may need to increase the RAM, so let me give it around 7 GB. That is quite more than sufficient. So next. Then create a virtual hard disk now, that is also okay. Create next. Then VDI VirtualBox disk image, so this is what actually we are going to create. Say next. Dynamically allocated, that is what is the size of hard disk, so I'm going to make it around, this is sufficient, around 32 GB, and then create. On the top of it, basically once this SUSE, before you power it on, go to the settings of it and go to the network part. So we are going to have two adapters associated with it. One is the NAT adapter that will provide the IP address and through which it will actually access the internet, and the other one, that is the second adapter, we are going to provide it as a host only. This host only adapter will help us to provide a static IP address to this image. Okay, and so these two adapters we are going to use, and on the back end, as soon as we start this image, two respective files of adapters will be created in the operating system. One is already had been there. Second one, if it is not, if it not will be there, then we are going to create it, and we may need to configure it properly so that these two adapters, two different virtual adapters get set for this image. One adapter, one NAT to access the internet, and for the other adapter 2, that is host only, just to assign a static IP address to this image. Say OK, and now you can start it. So now you need to select the ISO where you have downloaded. So this is the ISO of SUSE 11 SP3. So this is my path. You need to give your path where you have extracted this ISO after getting downloaded. Okay, I'm opening it, saying start, and then I'm going to view it to be scaled mode and make it full screen. Okay, so we cannot directly boot it from disk because our installation is not yet ready. This is how you will see the options while you start an installation of SUSE 11. Okay, so currently we do not have anything as of now, so we need to start installation from fresh. So you need to select the option called installation and then say press enter. It will take some time to come up. So once come up, it will show you some welcome screen. So you just need to say I agree and say next. Then it will ask you media check. So basically you can check ISO file for any errors and all, but then we are just saying next. So since it is a new installation, we say next. Then we need to select the time zone. So basically we are in Asia. Let's say Kolkata. next. This should be physical machine, or you can say also for fully virtualized case. So that's what actually we are trying to do. Okay, the remaining option, that is the virtual machine for private para virtualized environments, like these are like all Zen virtualization or KV virtual, we are not using for it. Just create a physical machine. Say next. Now here it will provide you the overview. Okay, now here we need to do something very specific. Okay, and I will tell you something about that. So basically what happens is, if you just go with defaults while installing SUSE 11, what happens is basically the hard disk that you are using, or the part of hard disk that you are providing this SUSE, like say we have provided 38 GB of hard disk. So there would be one ID, that is UUID, will be associated with that hard disk. Okay, and for this particular installation, if you do by default SUSE is going to recognize the hard disk by its ID, and that ID is something very specific to every virtual image. So let's say if you are creating 2 or 3 virtual images independently, all those virtual images will have different hard disk ID. Okay, and suppose if you are using this image in order to clone it, the cloned version will have the different hard disk ID. Okay, or it should have a different hard disk ID. But the thing is, in the metadata somewhere, that hard disk ID will not get updated, and whenever you try to start the cloned image of your SUSE, that is not going to start at all, because the hard disk ID that is with the cloned version and its metadata information about that hard disk ID is completely not matching. Okay, and that's why SUSE will definitely get confused and it will never start. Okay, so let me show you where you can see that information. Okay, so go to the partitioning and do custom partitioning for, so this is like kind of experts, for experts basically. Okay, so we are pretending ourselves to be experts. Go to hard disk, select on SDA, instead of going for experts, just go to the first option. Okay, so if you go into expert, then come back and select the version 1, select the option 1 and go to accept it. Say accept, and again go into partitioning. Okay, so when we select option 1, it will create one prime part first. It will create one primary partition and another one the swap partition. Okay, now again go to partition, and this time go to custom partition for accept, for experts, do next, and then go to hard disk, then SDA, and select SDA1. Okay, so if you see the partition, it says that mount by ID. ID means it is like the unique ID associated with the hard disk. So most of the times this is a default option, and ID means it is this ID. If you see, this is the ID of hard disk, VirtualBox hard disk number. This is like some randomly hexadecimal kind of ID that will be associated with the hard disk of this image. Whenever you clone it, this particular ID gets changed for that cloned image. Okay, but somewhere in its metadata it is still saved this particular hard disk to start with. Okay, and at the runtime it will never find when you start the cloned image. Okay, so what we do is, instead of mount it by ID, we are going to mount it by label. Okay, so I will tell you how to make that. So currently it is swap partition, leave it, go to SDA1. So this is SDA2. So this is our primary partition that we need to mount with label instead of mount by ID. So currently it is set to be mount by ID. Okay, so I will edit it now and come here and go to FS tab, and currently it is said that it is mount in, so this is like it is mount by device ID. So instead of device ID I am saying mount by volume label. Again, then label this particular hard disk with root. Okay, you can just label it whatever you want, but the root is the good label for volume. So only this is needed. So just say OK and say finish. Now if you say instead of mount by ID, it becomes now mount by label, and the label is associated with root. So no matter what is the ID of it, okay, it is going to be associated always with this root and label. Okay, and so even if you clone it, it will just try to find that which particular hard disk is associated with the label root. Okay, and then your clone image will also be automatically come up without any issues. So this is only a specific thing needed in order to do the installation of SUSE. So I'm just accepting it. Rest everything looks fine. Do install. Say I agree and install. So it will take around 40 to 45 minutes in order to complete all the package installation. So I'm just pausing the video till then. Okay, once the installation is done, you will be presented with one screen to enter the root user and its password. So I am putting here password for root is, you can put your name or whatever you want. I am putting my name. Then do next. It will give just the warning that it's weak password, but it's okay. Then we need to just set the host name. In my case it is master2 cluster.com. Do next. So YAST2, that is like kind of through which actually through YAST you can configure the Linux. So it's like very simple to configure the Linux, like firewalls, network interfaces, HTTP server settings, NTP daemon settings. So all that it's very easy to do with YAST. So we can test the internet connectivity. Basically we have NAT adapter to be present in the image, so it should give the network connectivity. It will just test some file that it is trying to download. If it is getting downloaded properly, it means like the test is successful. So it is failed, maybe firewalls issue or anything. We will see that later. So do next on the network service configuration. So there are like the authentication mechanism that you can use. So one is local, that is /etc/passwd. So here it is a file which stores all the user information. You can have the user to be authenticated on SUSE either using the LDAP authentication mechanism or NIS or Windows domain. Okay, so LDAP or NIS will also provide you the way of using Kerberos authentication. That is mostly single sign-on, but since it is like kind of local installation we are doing, so we are going to use /etc/passwd to authenticate the user on our SUSE Linux. Now let me just give the name of user who is going to be created. Again, it is a simple password, no issues. Again, so it's just the release note. I'm saying next, and the system will just screen may flicker. Okay, and now it is going to come up in a while. So it is the hardware configuration. Just do next. We are not going to do anything with it. So it will just clone the YAST configuration just to, if you want to use it for later purpose. So YAST will have all the configuration that you have made for SUSE. So it is just taking a copy of that configuration somewhere. It will save it. You can just take that YAST configuration in other SUSE and have it configured that way. So it's cloned now. My installation is almost complete. Okay, so this is the welcome screen. We just need to put the user and password. And again, you can open the terminal and try to ping just to check if the connection is okay. Yes, it's pinging, so our internet is working. And then do ifconfig and try to see. So there are two adapters. One is ETS0, that is the NAT adapter through which we are accessing internet, and another is a loopback localhost adapter. So we need to, we had already, while creating this image, we had given one more adapter 2, that we set it on host only, from where we can get the static IP to this machine, right? So currently its configuration file is not there, so you need to go here on /etc/sysconfig network, do cd /etc sysconfig network, do ll. So there is one more file, ifcfgeth0. So you just, so this ifcfgeth0 is for NAT adapter, that is the adapter 0. For adapter 1 we need to create it. So what I will do is I will copy this ifcfg eth0 to ifcfg eth1. So this new file we are creating. Now we do have two files, and then we just need to configure this eth1 file. And instead of DHCP, I want it to get the IP address to be static. Then we need to provide that which IP address we want. So currently, basically we are on VirtualBox, and VirtualBox is having its you can just do cmd, and basically if you try IP config on Windows, so basically you'll find that there is one VirtualBox host only adapter IP address, that is this one. So whenever you install your VirtualBox, this particular entry will be there, and that entry is 198.168.50. So this is the you can say gateway which we can use in order to get our static IP. So we can get the static IP in this range 190.168.56. So starting from 2 to 200 and 254, we can assign the IP address anyone between this range. So let me go and assign the IP address to it as 192.168.56. Let's say 131. Then the netmask is 255.255.255.0, and I want ONBOOT equals to yes. So whenever the system gets boot, the assignment of the IP address will be automatically done. Once done, let's save it, and then you can say service network restart. So both of the adapters are now restarted. Now if you do ifconfig, you'll find three IP addresses assigned to our machine. One is the NAT, that is for internet use, ETH1, that is host only for static IP, and one local. So that's it. Now we can connect this with putty. Before that, we can just run yast2, that is again the way through which we can configure our SUSE. So run yast2 command on your command line, put enter, and now we can first search for firewalls and go to firewall and disable them and stop firewall now. Okay, and that's it. So we need to stop the firewall, do next and do finish. Search for host name and change it to whatever you require it to be. Go to host name. Currently it's localhost, so I am going to add new entry to it for 192.168.56.131. that is our IP address, and its corresponding host name should be master2. That is as per, you can set whatever host name you want, master.com, and alias would be master2. Say OK. This new entry got added. Just say finish. Then you can select for HTTP. So this HTTP server needs to be installed. Currently it is just being there, but it is not yet installed, so I am saying just install it. And once installed, we just need to make it okay. So the default port is 80, and it will you can hit that default port on any of these available IP addresses. Okay, so I am saying next. We can enable PHP scripting, Perl scripting, Python scripting, but we don't require as of now, so I'm just saying next. Now here you will see that the root directory of our HTTP server is /srv/ww/htdocs. It means that whatever files or directories or whatever resources that you want to place on your HTTP server should be placed under this directory in SUSE Linux. Okay, so your root directory of HTTP server is /srv/www/htdocs. I'm saying next. And we want it to be started whenever our system gets boot, and finish. So HTTP setup is also done. Go to NTP. This is again network time protocol. We just made it on now, and on boot also it should be automatically started. So it will just sync the time of your machine with whatever server it is linked to. I'm saying okay. Now the things are done. Now you can go to putty and try to connect it with. So our IP address is 192.168.56.131. Open, update its private key, make the changes, make it more, do root and password, and we are good with this machine. Okay.